Good evening. Welcome to Sandra's Authors Forum, where everybody is somebody. It affords me a pleasure to introduce to you the one and only Dr. Bobby Jackson. Will you welcome him to the stage today? Hello, Bobby. How are you?
I'm doing phenomenal. How are you? I'm super excited to be here today. Definitely excited to dive into some of the stuff we were going to talk about.
Oh, I'm just so excited as well. And so, will you do me a favor and tell the audience just a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So, my name is Dr. Bobby Jackson. I'm just a passionate veteran who fell in love with business. I'm from a small town in Jacksonville, Florida, where the music is loud, the cars are lifted, drama is a way of life kind of thing. But fortunately for me, I joined the Marine Corps shortly after that. And it doesn't take an economist to know where I'm from. Like, they didn't have many entrepreneurs, they didn't have a lot of legal business entities. So, I was quite fortunate when I left that area and joined the Marine Corps. And that's where I learned manhood. That's where I learned accountability, honor, courage, commitment, and things like that. I went on to study finance and economics, and then I went on to study entrepreneurship. So my undergraduate ended up being a applied entrepreneurship degree with a concentration in finance and economics. From there,
I think he broke up just a tad, but he's going on to tell you a little bit about himself. And when he comes back, I will continue on. But here, if you read on the screen, it says Dr. Bobby Jackson is a seasoned um, CFO. If you know what a CFO is, please tell me. All right. In the comment section, an entrepreneurial strategist dedicated to helping high performing CEOs achieve exceptional business success. Um, I see that you are in the comment section, and we are just so elated to have you today. Will you do me a favor and go tell a friend to tell a friend that Sandra's Authors Forum is live right now, and we are on the air. We're waiting on our guest to come back in, but he helped companies become all that they can become. He's going to talk about several things during the show. One of them is what are the three phases of entrepreneurship? You know, we hear about entrepreneurial um, individuals all the time, but what really is entrepreneurship? He's going to tell you all about that coming shortly. And here he is.
yes. I
All
want to
right.
apologize in advance, guys. There's a storm going on here. So what I did just to make sure that doesn't happen to us again is I switched to these handy dandy things and I'm running
Yes.
off of my phone's Wi-Fi. So that shouldn't happen again. I've been
Cool.
using it throughout the day. It's been storming all day here. So we should be locked in for the rest of the call. But
Praise
with
God.
that being said, it's it was there in the Marine Corps where I learned honor, courage, commitment, manhood, accountability, things of that nature, entrepreneurship with the concentration, finance and economics, and then went on to get the doctorate in entrepreneurship as well. And from there, I left the Marine Corps after 12 years and decided to build a business and become an entrepreneur. So I had my first company in California. My next company was in North Carolina. Then I started a company in Florida, and then I started another company in North Carolina, and I didn't always get it right. I paid a lot of back taxes in in California. I paid a lot of learning costs in Florida. I paid some cost in North Carolina, but persistence, education, and resilience got us to the point where we were able to scale that company. The last company that I built, which was a financial consulting firm, we scaled that company by 400% revenue growth for 3 consecutive years and continued to build that out. And it's with that background of military precision, experience, entrepreneurship in the academic realm, and the practical application of tried and true methodologies and growing a company myself is that foundation in which I'll be sharing my insights and expertise on the intersection between finance, cash flow, entrepreneurship, and how all that really works together to drive results for individuals that want to get into business and grow and scale existing businesses.
I love it. You said a few things. Let's start with the first thing that really piqued my interest. And you said that going to the Marines, correct,
That's right.
um, taught you manhood. What do you mean by that?
Mhm.
Because the reason I'm asking you is because we have a lot of males on the street, a lot of single parent
Mhm.
homes, you know, in this society that we live in. It is important for a man to find his place so he can
Right.
scale life as you did. So that's the foundation that set you on the right road. So tell me about
Mhm.
that.
Now, this may sound very strange and contrary to popular belief, but one of the biggest things it taught me was how to suffer well and how to endure pain with a purpose and a process.
Mm,
So, manhood for me really became something not about how many women you could have. That's one metric. It wasn't about how much money you could make. That's another metric. It wasn't about how big you could get, how buff you could be in the gym, another metric. It was more so about how well you could lead, how
mm,
well you could receive instruction and turn that instruction into results. And where the pain and suffering piece came in was we learned really quickly that you do what has to get done because it
right.
has to get done, and you show up for people because that's what you're supposed to do. Like, it's a salary based job. No matter how much work you do, you're not getting any more money for it. So it's not like you're doing it for the money. It's not like you're doing it for the fame. We're not famous. We're really under the radar. So when I say manhood, it really taught me how to, like, suffer in silence. But we don't mean that like, oh, don't say things that are bad. We mean that in build yourself intrinsically first. Like, don't
Mm,
go bleeding on everybody. Like, build yourself up intrinsically, stand on your morals, values, and principles. Do what you have to do because it has to get done. Don't shift the blame to someone else. Take accountability, follow orders, be a good leader, like all of those things. Don't complain. So that's really what I mean by suffering
uh,
well, because life is suffering, but suffering isn't a bad thing. It's just a part of life. Pain is a part of life, and you can make those things very beautiful.
exactly. As long as you learn from your mistakes. You said you built several companies and you didn't always get it right. It's very
Mhm.
humbling to hear you say that because a lot of the greats made mistakes, failed at what they did, and then they
Right.
learn from those mistakes and they become great people. So I
Right.
appreciate you for your honesty in that. But on the screen, these are some companies that you were able to help. Talk to me about that. Can you see them?
Yes, yes, I can. So the Small Business Center, many of you all have them. They're just about in every location in your major city. Every community college has one, I believe, by law associated with them. So that's one area. So if you've ever been to a small business center and you've had a small business consultant, counselor, or manager working on one of your accounts, I was one of them. I was in the background, crunching numbers. I was in the background reading grants. I was in the background building business plans and evaluating business plans and business models. And I can honestly say, without exaggeration, I've probably talked to over 1,000 entrepreneurs, plus multiple thousands of entrepreneurs in my 5 to 8 year career as an entrepreneur, and I've seen hundreds, no exaggeration, of business plans. Looking them over, improving them, working through them, and helping entrepreneurs improve them. And it's been a lot of fun. So that's the Small Business Center. The Michigan Veterinary Practice, while I was working as their CFO, they actually won Michigan Veterinary Practice in their state, like in that region. They won the best practice of the year that year from just the phenomenal work that they were doing. So with that company, they were a retired veteran as well, a major, and she did phenomenal things with that business. So my job there was to help build the organization, optimize the revenue in that operation, and just lean out operations on the cost side, lean out the cost of operations. And then consultants and coaches was my bread and butter for a little while. If you were a coach or a consultant and you were trying to build that business, launch it, especially in the height of the pandemic, I was helping them with business modeling, really building a business model, because we were shifting away from business plans because there was just too much uncertainty in the market at the time. So those are a few of the businesses that I've helped and a few of the things that I did with those businesses.
Wonderful. And so we want to talk now about um, what are the three phases of entrepreneurship? We hear the word thrown around a lot, and we
Mhm.
probably only think about one phase, but you have three phases. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So the three phases that I think are the most important and that just about every entrepreneur goes through is going to be the startup phase. And then you've got the scaling phase. And then you've got the exit. And you generally want to do that. You want to scale or you want to start up, depending on where you're at. You want to get that thing off the ground first. But after you get it off the ground, you want to be able to grow it. You got to be able to scale it, get to some profitability markers. And then once you've got a nice, valuable company, you want to be able to exit that company in a myriad of ways. You could put in a trust and pass it down to family, or you could sell it to, say, a buyer, just someone that wants to buy the company, or you could even take the company public if that's something that you decided to do, or private equity. That's an option as well.
Perfect. So I asked them when you were out, what does CEO means? And so Martina Anderson from upstate New York, she said Chief Executive Officer. So can you elaborate on your title and what that means and how you can help other people?
Absolutely. So for your CEOs, those are the people I normally help. So I am a CFO. So that's going to be Charlie Foxtrot Oscar, CFO. And a CFO is a chief financial officer. So you have a C suite normally, and a C suite traditionally is made up of three executives, and that's going to be your chief executive officer, your chief financial officer, and your chief operations officer. Now, some companies and many companies today have a lot more in their C suite. You have chief growth officers, which is pretty new. You have chief marketing officers, which is also new. Then you have in software companies chief intelligence officers and technology officers, CTOs, chief technology officers. But it really depends on what type of company you're running. But to answer the question most directly, I'm a CFO, and as a CFO, I manage the resources in a business. So that's your money, your people, your assets, such as your equipment, your time, your labor. All of those things have to work together in order to drive profitability. And that's the job of a CFO, is to see the vision of the CEO, identify the available resources, and organize those resources to drive the most profitability.
All right. I want you to put in the comment section CFO. All right. Put in the comment section CFO. All right. And so there's a question. Well, first of all, she says, my future endeavor is to open an event hall in 2025 here in Wisconsin. Do you have any expertise to give her?
So if you're creating an event hall, the first thing that I would say is why? That's a good question to ask, is why an event hall? Because you've got two types of entrepreneurs in today's age that I see. You've got the idealistic entrepreneur, and then you've got the technical entrepreneur. So the idealistic entrepreneur is the one that has a bright idea and they're like, okay, I want to build this, but just because we want to build it doesn't mean we should build it. And then you've got the technical entrepreneur, which builds based on hypotheses. So the way I teach this is you want to break that word hypothesis down, because people that have ideas, everybody has ideas, and not every idea should be acted upon in a business framework. But if you have a hypothesis, that's much better for entrepreneurship. So a hypothesis is a hypothetical thesis. So what you want to do when you write a hypothesis in the startup phases of building a company of any kind is you want to have the hypothetical. What do you think is true? And then you want to have the thesis, which is a summarization of the things you think and the things that need to be true in order for your business to be viable. So an example of this could be, hypothetically, if I created an event hall in Wisconsin, it would attract these three core audiences and they would pay this amount of money. Thesis statement. If these people pay this amount of money and I'm able to attract them with a degree of regularity, then the likelihood of me producing X in revenue and sustaining that revenue over time is true. So if all of those things work out in your hypothesis, then you've got a really good business idea that you can
Mm.
execute against. So that would be my advice is ask yourself, one, why am I building this? And then ask yourself, two, is this just a good idea, or can you build a viable hypothesis around it that makes sense?
Very good. So the next question, could you describe to us an example of a business model?
Yes. So a business model has 9 core functions. And the 9 core functions of a business model are key resources, key partnerships, key activities, value proposition, cost structure, revenue streams, distribution, customer relationship management or customer lock in, and lastly, customer segmentation. You're very welcome, Ms. Wallace. So when you're building out a business model, you're trying to hit all of those 9 functions. And for those that are taking notes, I'll say those one more time just a little bit faster. So you've got key resources, key partnerships, key activities, value proposition, cost structure, revenue streams, distribution, customer relationship management, and customer segmentation. So on the one side, what you're trying to figure out is who do I need? That's key resources. Like, what do I need? Key partnerships is who do I need? Key activities are what things do I have to do to drive revenue? And then cost structure says, what's all this going to cost me? How much is it going to cost to run this operation? The value proposition is what problem in the market are you solving? And then
Mm.
revenue streams is where is the money coming from based off of the sales that you're making based on the value proposition. Distribution is how do you get the value to the marketplace. Then you've got customer relationship lock-in or customer relationship management or customer lock-in. Pretty much how are you optimizing or maximizing the value of every customer. So if you bring a customer in, it costs you money. We call that customer acquisition cost. Once you bring that customer in, you want to keep that customer for a duration of time. So you want to keep selling to that customer, kind of like toilet paper. If you use Shaman, they brought you in once because you saw a Shaman commercial, but they cost them money to put that commercial out there. So that's customer acquisition cost. But if you love Shaman toilet paper and you're using it for 20 years, then the customer lifetime value of that customer is like 20 years plus all the money that you spent on toilet paper in 20 years. So that's customer relationship management. You got to be able to identify how long you're going to have that customer with you and what products they're going to buy in the lifetime of their relationship with you. And then it's customer segmentation, which is when you're actually getting into all the different ways you can penetrate the market. So for me, I can serve coaches, consultants, and service providers. So I would segment that market. I would focus on coaches, consultants, and service providers. So market segmentation simply is a way to expand your market share. And that's what you want to do when you're getting into the scaling and growing aspect of any company. So that's the business model aspect.
Thank you so much for that. And what are the main issues you see with business models put in front of you?
Oh, they don't ever get in front of me. That's the problem. People don't do business models because they don't know how to do business models. So, and again, that's where we are today. So today, entrepreneurship has been reduced to most people as being the the ticket out of your 9 to 5. Most entrepreneurs that I'm coming in contact today, more and more as the generations kind of transition, is I want to be an influencer or a lifestyle brand. And
Mm.
those are businesses. They are. However, they function very differently. And most people don't feel like they need business plans anymore. They just feel
Mm.
like they need a platform and an idea. And in many cases, a platform and an idea can make you 6 figures and in some cases 7 figures. However, the reality behind that is it's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep. And most people can make a lot of money and not have any money because it takes money to make money. And as your brand grows, your business grows and expenses grow, you may make more money, but you're paying out more expenses. So they're not really getting ahead. They just left one rat race to join the next one. So they left W2 9 to 5s first in the 15th rat race. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to make my $1,000,000 to making $1 million a year, 3 years in a row to making zero and having no 401k, no IRA, no sustainability, no cash. But they made $3 million, but they have nothing to show for it. And that's because they don't have cost structures. They don't have revenue streams, contingency plans, exit strategies. Like they don't believe in that stuff. So the issue is I don't see them.
Very good. What are the four ways money moves in a business?
So that's an excellent question. The first way you move money in your business is revenue. Okay. So revenue comes from sales. So you got to sell something. Once you sell, you've got cash flow. Now, cash flow is the amount of money, cash, that stays in your company from period to period. So let's say you generated $10,000 in sales and you had $8,000 in expenses. You have a positive cash flow of $2,000. Most companies are operating with a negative cash flow, and especially if they're pre-revenue. So like if they don't have any revenue coming in or their expenses, they've got coaching programs, they've got marketing, go high level platforms and Canva. They've got all these expenses coming out, and many of them don't even have accounts like bookkeeping set up. So they're not even tracking those expenses. But that's cash flow. But most people are operating at a net negative cash flow simply because they're not tracking all the expenses and they're not making real money. They're really pumping money into their business from their personal savings accounts and whatever, or their 9-to-5s. And that's called bootstrapping. So that's cash flow, and cash flow, that's the second way money moves through your business is revenue, less expenses. Then you've got profitability, and profitability pretty much says, based on this time period, did we have an excess of revenue or cash, or did we have a decrease? And profitability is tricky because you're really looking at you're looking at sales to a degree and not the whole operation. So cash flow is looking at the whole cash operation, where profitability oftentimes isolates sales. So did I sell this pencil that I paid $2 for to produce? Did I sell that for $3? If I sold the pencil for $3, then I profited off the pencil. But if I have other expenses like payroll and systems and taxes and all that other stuff, then I didn't really profit. I profited off of the pencil. And if that's the isolated metric, then yes, but it's a vanity metric in that case, which is why we look at all four ways money moves in a business. So that's profitability. Profitability is a good metric to have, but it's more so a metric to grow than a metric to assess. And that's my professional opinion. And then you've got equity. And equity is how much the company is worth. And a good way to look at equity in a company year to year is how much cash was the company able to keep in its accounts at the end of the year. So you've got taxes, you've got interest, debt, all of the different things, and then expenses, and you need to pay all of that. And you want to see how much cash is left in the bank accounts from the earnings that you made that year. And that'll give you a nice solid understanding of the solvency of the company. Most companies don't have cash left over at the end of the year. They're either paying back taxes or they're late on debt. They're working out payment plans and all that other stuff. And that's a part of business. That's a part of the startup phase, but you want to get through that phase too, so that you do have some equity in your company.
All right. And so there's a question from a veteran as well. And he says, if you had to consult a veteran on how to become an entrepreneur in real estate, where would you start? And we thank you for both for your services.
Yes. I actually worked with veterans. That was my focus when I was working with many of the entrepreneurs. So when it comes to real estate is it's a money game. And I say a money game because you normally need to have a substantial amount of capital to get in real estate and do real numbers. Because most people that say they want to get into real estate as a business, they want to run a real estate syndicate, or they want to own a conglomerate of properties. They want to have, say, 8 to 10 properties or 100 doors or an apartment building or something like that. So in order to get into that, you're looking at investors. You're going to need people to help you because you have to pool capital in order to do that. So what I'll give you are two ways I've seen people go about this. So if you're a veteran and you're just trying to get a few properties under your belt and have passive income coming through, more so an investor and not an entrepreneur. And that's a very big distinction to make here. You've got real estate investors and then you've got real estate entrepreneurs. The real estate entrepreneur is trying to run a real estate business. So they have an operation, a marketing staff, they're financing stuff, they're running a business, an operation. Whereas a real estate investor is simply purchasing assets and leveraging those assets for the cash that they can extract from them by managing them. So what I'll say is this: veterans have the VA loan. The VA loan is zero down and you can use it once a year for your primary resident. I would simply, and this is what I've seen also, is I would simply use my VA loan, buy a property. Once I buy, I probably shoot for duplexes and triplexes and quadruplexes, nice places where you can put a couple of families in there, and then stay in them for a year. Once you stay in them for a year and you qualify to use your VA loan again, get them filled with tenants. And once you put the tenants in there, then simply go and do it all over again. Use your VA loan, purchase a property, zero down, rinse, wash, repeat. And in about 4 to 5 years, you can have, say, 20 doors if you buy duplexes and quadruplexes, so on and so forth, or small houses, because if you do it right, you can pool the capital coming in from all of your other investments that are working, and then you can buy properties outright. So you can use the VA loan to kind of get started with the zero down, but once you start getting capital coming in from the multiple investment properties, you can use that passive income or that liquidity to purchase other properties, and then you can borrow against those properties as well, so that you don't have to guarantee them personally, but you can guarantee them through your assets. And that's when you start getting into LLCs and putting the properties into an LLC to protect the property. And we don't have to get into that, but that's the investor route. But if you were trying to do the business route, I would highly recommend a business partner, 2 or 3, and then looking at a small duplex or a few duplexes, or like a very small like apartment complex that you can get into. And then the goal is pretty much to buy those assets, fill those assets, and you're pretty much running a business. You're marketing, hey, we got these properties, people come live in them. Then you're selling, okay, this is the rent, blah, 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 blah. And then you're running the operation. You hire the project manager. Once you hire the project manager, their job is 10% of whatever your asset is making. And then you move down into finance and accounting. You're like, okay, this is the profit margin that we're shooting for. Once we hit this profit margin with consistency, we're going to finance, meaning we're going to borrow against the success of the asset, and we're going to buy another one. And then you get down into team building and executive decision making. And that's when you start hiring small teams, or you start expanding your property management practice. And now you're really getting into the business of property management. You're not necessarily a real estate entrepreneur, you're a property manager. That's the business of multiple real estate assets, is property management. And you would build a property management company.
Where would you find the employees?
Indeed is pretty good. LinkedIn is pretty good. And then word of mouth works really good. Facebook Marketplace is really good. So those are where I would start: LinkedIn, Indeed, Facebook Marketplace, and just signs, signs outside looking for, we will train, competitive wages.
Cool. Is it wiser to buy property or land?
Ideally, if you can buy both, that's good. Like if you can buy land with property that is on land, that's ideal, because it's turnkey at that point. And when I say ideal, it's ideal based on what you're trying to do. So the way that question was phrased is it's a little tricky. Is it wiser to do A or B? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. So I will say it this way: if you have something more turnkey, there's a little less risk involved. So if you buy land only, the question then becomes, are you holding it and waiting for it to appreciate? Because that could be an expensive strategy, because you still have to pay property taxes. You still have to pay whatever it costs to purchase the asset, and then you're waiting to leverage the asset to employ it. So if you just own land, it's a great buy and hold strategy for investors. But if you're trying to get passive income out of the land that you've purchased, you want to have a revenue generating asset on the land. So that could be a house, or that could be campgrounds, or that could be a park of some kind. But you need to have something on the asset that's driving traffic to the asset, paying for the asset, and potentially producing passive income or cash flow for the asset. So that's one approach. Now, when you say or buy property, property is great because it's more turnkey, in the sense that you can put people in it, and the business model for it is very straightforward. So I would say if you can, but depending on what you want to do, if it's a buy and hold strategy, land is great, it's excellent. And then if it's a passive income situation, then buy something that has an asset on it.
All right, audience, if you are enjoying this show, I want you to put a 2 in the comment section real quick. Everybody that's watching, I see people from everywhere. If you're watching right now, I want you to put a 2 in the comment section if you are enjoying what you are hearing. If you have learned something from this show, I want you to hurry up and put a 3 in the comment section really quickly. Are you learning anything? We want to know what you're doing out there. If you're listening, let me know. So put a 2 in the comment section. What? All right. I see the numbers coming in. I see the numbers coming in. All right. Thank you so much. All right. You talked about trust just briefly. Now, it is important to have a trust. How can one build a business to financially stability to pass down to their family? So let's reword that. How can one
Sure.
build a business of financial stability to be passed down to their family members?
So this is a very interesting conversation, because a lot of people are struggling right now to
Yes.
get their kids to inherit the business, believe it or not. So, what we are finding is that people are inheriting businesses and selling them within a year. Kids. And a trust can be almost a gift and a curse. So if the trust says they can't sell the company, but
Mhm.
they feel like they could be more beneficial, or they could leverage the capital better if they sold it. So let's say you build a rent or an electric company, and you are an electrician and your company is worth $10 million. If your daughter doesn't want to touch a hammer, could care less about a multimeter, and doesn't want to see a light bulb, like she doesn't want to do it, and you put that in the trust, and that's supposed to be a part of her inheritance. If she doesn't want to run that company, she's not going to be in a great place, to run that company or to want to run that company. And she might not even be able to sell that company if the trust doesn't allow it. So, in one sense, it's great because you can pass it down and you can protect it and you can get various benefits from it. But on the other hand, technology and the way humans engage with reality is changing so rapidly that here's what I would say to answer your question. I would say, first and foremost, build a company that is valuable. The way you build a valuable company is ensuring that it has either positive cash flow, great prospects for discounted cash flows, or a strong balance sheet. Now, there's other ways to do it, but those are the big three. Like, revenue is strong, like you're selling year after year, and you're selling more than the cost of production. That's a strong company, because you can sell that company based off of revenue multiples. Meaning, okay, if your company made 3 million a year for 3 consecutive years, you can sell that company at a revenue multiple of 3, which means you got a $9 to $10 million company that's only generating $3 million a year. That's what we call a revenue multiple. Now you can have discounted cash flows. Now, discounted cash flows is saying, based on the growth rate of this company and what it's likely to produce over time, it's worth this in the future. So I'm willing to pay this today. So if you have a company that's growing at 50% revenue year after year, if you are doing 10 million in revenue, but you're growing at 50% a year, that means next year you're going to do 15 million. The year after that, you're going to do what, about 22 million. And then the year after that, if growth continues, you're going to do somewhere around 40 to 50 million. So right now you're just making 10 million, but you could potentially sell that company for $50 million, simply because in the next 3 years, the company will be worth $50 million. And if the right person buys it, it'll continue to grow and scale. So discounted cash flows is another way of building a very valuable company. And then lastly, a balance sheet. Just have a very strong balance sheet, meaning you've got strong assets offsetting your liabilities, and you're leveraging your equity strategically over time to maximize the valuation. In other words, you've got revenue coming in, you're taking care of your equipment, you're taking care of your accounts, your receivables, and all that good jazz. You're minimizing your debt liability. You're making sure the investments that you make are smart. And when it comes to equity, you are doing your best to reinvest any cash that you have in the account. Like, you're not sitting with a whole bunch of cash in the bank account. You're investing that cash into other operations and activities that make the business stronger and stronger. And if you do all 3 of those, that's great. If you do one of those 3 things, that's great. But ideally, doing one of those 3 things is going to give you a nice, strong company that can be sold. And that, at a minimum, is needed in order to pass a company down to someone and it be of value. But the trust side of the house is interesting. But if you've got a family of boys and y'all all grew up on the same tractor trailer, area, and they love farming, they love hunting, and they love raising cattle, that's a very strategic thing to do. Same thing Henry Ford did, and the Trump family. Like, if you guys love real estate, Trump went on to build towers and hotels, all that good stuff. So it's just got to make sense for the family. You're muted.
Wouldn't you have that conversation with your family members prior to your decease?
Ideally, and the thing with that is, the thing with trust that I've seen, so I'm not a trust lawyer, I just work on the financial side. So I look at is this a valuable company that we're putting in the trust? But here's what I've seen. I see that trusts have trustees, and that's where it gets complicated and tricky. So again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how you write these things. But sometimes if the trustees, for example, has control over the LLC, and the operators of the LLC, the executives, the CEOs, or what have you, are, say, the kids, but the kids aren't the trustees because you don't want to have conflicts of interest, so to speak. It's like, what do you do?
Right.
What do you do?
All right. Thank you so much for that. Now, you help so many companies, and one type of facility is a daycare. How can your products benefit daycares?
Absolutely. So daycares are interesting because they need to sell just as much as anyone else, but they also need to increase their prices just as much as anyone else. And they also need to reduce cost, right? So daycares can benefit from us by having our management scorecard. Because when you can't readily increase prices like willy-nilly, so let's say you're in a rural area and you're charging pretty high for your daycare prices based on what the median income is. If that's your situation, increasing prices by 10%, that might not be feasible. Increasing prices by 20% might not be feasible. So what you have to do if you're trying to grow that business or increase that business is you've got to eliminate waste. You've got to be able to run this company more cost efficiently. And that could be rewriting food contracts or getting food contracts. Because if you're going to Walmart or you're going to the grocery store and you're buying food at retail prices, then hey, you're losing money. Or you could go and find a food provider, and if this food provider does frozen pizzas, discounted milk, cheese, XYZ, and you can lock in a contract, at that point now you're buying a contract from a food service provider that's going to give you the food at quantity, and you can save money on groceries. So that's just a very simple way is you're looking at where are we getting our food from? Food Lion, Walmart, or a provider. If you're paying retail prices, you're probably paying a markup. And if you can lower that markup and then distribute that markup across all the families in your thing, then you can identify certain things. And if you have that level of knowledge now, you can start getting into the weeds, because let's say you've got majority of your families are, say, 3 to 5 kids. And the higher end parents, and this is statistically speaking, higher income families tend to have less kids. And that's just the data. Some may say it's because of education purposes, pursuits, whatever it is. Higher incomes have lower kids. So if that's true of your daycare center as well, you've got to analyze that. Are you feeding more kids because the families that those kids come from are lower income and they simply have more kids, and you're offsetting that by your parents that can pay more but they have less kids? Then should you have a limit for how many kids you're bringing in of certain income thresholds? All of those things can be worked into the mathematics of who to charge what, how to charge, and where to buy food from and resources. So a management scorecard is very good, and that would be around finances and accounting. What should we finance and how should our accounting look?
Now you have a free giveaway, like that you're offering a giveaway product called the Management Scorecard. You want to elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So the management scorecard has about 9 questions on, or 9 sections, and each section has about 3 questions in it. And it's pretty much a very simple way of saying, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And you grade yourself. And once you grade yourself on, and here are the 8 functions, just so you guys know what they are. You've got marketing, then you've got sales, you've got operations, and
Well,
you've got
let's talk
team.
about marketing. Uh, we're going to do one by one.
Okay, so we're definitely going to go into the weeds a little bit. I'll try to keep it
Yes.
as simple as possible and quick. So marketing, I like to use the 5A framework. So when you're doing marketing, you're focusing on awareness, you're focusing on attraction, attention, acquisitions, and ad budget. So when I'm managing a marketing operation, I need to identify the brand. So the brand awareness, brand effectiveness, brand positioning, all of that drives awareness. And awareness is where traffic comes from. So you need traffic in order to have conversion. So then once you've got awareness down, you've got attraction. So if you have attraction, you need to attract the right people. That's when you have brand identity. So you can have the right brand, but attract the wrong people if you're sending the wrong message. And this is all marketing. So then you get into attention. Once you have awareness and then you have attraction, you're out there, people know who you are, you're attracting the right people, then you need to maintain their attention, because that's what causes people to buy. It's called the know, like, and trust. People need to know who you are, have a reason to like you, and trust you enough to give you their money.
Mhm. Mhm.
Once you have those 3 things, that comes from attention. You got to maintain their attention. So you can do that through webinars. You can do that the way Dr. Jackson is doing it, doing a weekly live stream. This is an attention sustainer. She's making sure that you guys know who she is, where she is, what she does, and how she's here to serve you. And she does it consistently. That attention is what's creating the trust with anyone who's ever bought anything from her or come onto her platform. And then you've got acquisition. So once you've done the attention piece, you've held them down, you've served them, then you move into the acquisition piece, which is converting them from an eyeball into a paying client. And that's when you do that consistently. Once you know what your conversion rates are, you move into ads. And ads says, I know enough about my market demographic and how much money they spend with me that I'm able to pay to acquire them. Meaning, if I know my ideal client is going to spend $600 with me in the first 90 days, I can spend up to $100 to acquire that customer. And then I have what's known as ROAS, return on ad spend. And that's when you move into growth engines. And that's what drives marketing campaigns. So if we were to go one by one, Dr. Jackson, we'll be here for a while.
Forever.
So,
so sales.
Yes. So sales is the art of converting.
It's all right. Really and then operations.
Operations is the systematic approach to driving results.
All right. And team building.
That is culture in a nutshell. How do you attract the right team members, develop the right team members, and seed the right culture?
Finances.
So finances is borrowing money to make more money. So finance is borrowing money. That's very important to understand the distinction there.
All right. Borrowing money. Structuring.
So before we go into structuring, I'd like to hit accounting. So accounting comes normally before we do financing. So accounting is tracking. So you guys want to have accounting. And then structuring is normally one of the later things we do. So structure will come into the organizational development side of the house. So think about it like this. Once you do financing, you're going to move into executive decision making. And that's really going to be how you think through making important decisions. And then we will get to structuring, which is what structures need to be designed, developed, and implemented to sustain new activity, new growth.
All right, perfect. And then executive decision making.
Yep. So that's the one that we just covered. So executive decision making is simply how do we think through decision making with a data evidence-based approach. That's the biggest part, is evidence-based, data-centered. That's how executives think. And if you're not thinking that way, then it's normally costing you money.
Wow. And we don't want to do that. And this the last one, organizational development?
Yes. And that's the one we touched on a little bit, which was me simply breaking down infrastructure. So when you get to executive development, you're really thinking through infrastructure. How do we build what needs to be built in order to scale?
We want to hop on before we go because we only have 2 more minutes. I want everybody to share this live, share it. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, I want you to go now and hit that bell. All right. But Chat GPT is a hot topic and some people are leery of it. And so I want you to just talk about it because this is something that you're very versed in. All right. Mm-hmm. So it increased labor capacity?
Yep, that's right. That's right. So ChatGPT is what's known as an LLM. So that's a large language model. So pretty much what that means is when human beings think, like right now, take a second if you're watching this and say something in your own head. Say hello. Now say whatever your name is and where you went to college. All right. So you heard all of that in your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So the fact that you heard that in your head means that you thought it. At least that's what we say. I thought that. So a large language model, what it's saying is that human beings today use thinking and language synonymously. So that means we think in words, and our language is very mathematical, believe it or not. So if I say, I want to go to the store, I can write that in a mathematical equation. I, me being the object, want being the desire, say an addition, go to the
Mhm.
store being a location. And that could be mathematically represented. Location, what do we call it? Subject, predicate, and a noun. Those are simply variables. And if you organize those variables in a certain way, you have language. So what ChatGPT really is it's a mechanism for turning language into mathematical equations that represent reasoning or
Mm.
thinking. So that's really what it is. So when we get into how can it be used to produce more, increase capacity, what we're saying is that everything that I think, I have to reason through. So if you have a good idea, that means you had a thought, a bright idea. In order for that thought to come into fruition, you've got to write it down. And when you write it down, you've got to piece it together. And then you've got to go do research over here. And you've got to actually piece the thought together. So what ChatGPT is really doing, like on the surface level, on that very entry level, is it's enabling human beings to think faster and produce things from their thoughts. So before, you'd have to think it, write it down, research it, validate it, build it, and do all of that other stuff. What ChatGPT does is it says, if you can think it and give me the words in language format in a sentence, what I can do is I can formulate that sentence. I can reason against that sentence. And if you plug me into the right apps, I can even build what you thought. And that's how you increase capacity, by understanding how it actually works and what it does.
Oh, so they said they've never thought about it in that aspect. So, and a lot of people said they're learning, you're learning. And so I want you to, since you're learning, donate stars. All right. Stars are probably 55 cents. Go ahead and hit the stars and donate some stars to Sandra's Authors Forum. And if you're enjoying yourself and learned something off of this program, we have a way for you to show your appreciation, and it's on the screen. All right. If you use PayPal, it is journeyintopurpose22 at gmail.com. Or if you use Venmo, and everything is on the screen. All right. Because we pay for these platforms, we need your support as well to keep good people coming this way. We have a few questions for you. And so I want to pop them on the screen.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. The first one was from Sandra Jackson, Sandra M. Jackson. What are some mistakes that people make when attempting to maintain generational wealth?
That's a good one. They do not understand and or learn the fundamentals of investing. Most of them outsource investing to a financial manager, an asset manager, or someone like that. And for the sake of time, I'll keep these kind of brief if there's other questions, but to rectify that, I think everyone should study the two forms of investing, or understanding how to make wise investments. So one of them is incremental analysis, or excuse me, fundamental analysis. That's one of them. And then the other one is, man, I think it's statistical analysis. I haven't done them in a while, but for sake of time, that's one of the biggest mistakes, is they don't understand how to actually invest and what investing is. So they take all the money that they made and then they lose it because they don't know how to grow it.
So the question says, what tips do you have for authors? Would they benefit from your expertise?
Absolutely. So for authors, many of them stop with the book. I say my advice is start with the book. Okay. So one of the best things you can do as an author, in my experience, is write the book, sell the book, create a course from the book, speak about the book as a professional speaker, and then create workshops and go on tour. Okay. So most authors don't do that. They write the book and they write a series of books, but Anybody that's ever been an author knows books, unless they're textbooks, they're not really selling out the garden, but they can be excellent marketing tools and break the ice, which can get you in the door to do workshops, speaking engagements, and various other things that make your expertise way more valuable to the marketplace. Not saying that your book isn't valuable, but people pay more.
Correct. And so you are a speaker as well, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And how can people hire you out?
Absolutely. Right now, you guys can simply DM me or send me an email. Right now, I'm not doing like big booking engagements. I talked to Dr. Jackson about this earlier. Is we're really looking to see what the market's going to do. So me being an economist by trade, being a financial analyst by trade, I know when to slow down and stop and watch and when to put my feet on the gas. But for stuff like this, it's an hour or it's virtual and we're not flying around to do stuff like that. Like we do fly and speak, but I'll do these, but flying out, we're not doing too much of those right now.
Well, we're happy to have you on here. There's another question. Has networking helped you in your success? What are some tips you could give entrepreneurs to maintain their connections made while networking? That's an excellent question.
Excellent question, by the way. Networking, everything. What do they say? Your network is your net worth. That's a very true statement, I think. How to do it most effectively. Start with a give, not an ask. So most people that are networking are either networking unintentionally, meaning they're just meeting people that they have no real intent because they don't have a real business model. Remember, one of the 9 things in your business model is key partnerships. So networking is all about creating strong partnerships and building those partnerships so that you can have synergy and alignment. So that's one thing that I would recommend is go into the networking experience with intention. Understand that you're looking for partnerships and synergy, and you're not looking to make friends. Like entrepreneurs don't have time to be friends anyway. Like when's the last time you went out to do something for yourself? You're building your business, reading books in college and making money. So it's like, don't fool yourself and don't fool others. Like make connections, make partnerships, execute on those partnerships, and understand you're looking for synergy and partnerships.
And you have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. You have to vet them, right?
Absolutely.
Correct.
I couldn't agree more. And because they'll waste your time and you'll waste people's time unintentionally. It's like it's just like, I don't see this going anywhere. They don't see it going anywhere, but no one's engaged enough to say it to the other person. So it's just like, don't waste your
Right.
time.
But everybody is not a fit, and we have to know that as well.
I couldn't agree more. And
Solomon
that's
says, I'm in the process of making investments now. I'm definitely making sure to invest wisely. What are some tips you can give for a young person, male at that, that
Mhm.
is not, he doesn't have a family yet. So in order to plan for his future, what investments would you say he should do?
Okay. This is going to sound crazy, but
Oh
I'm going to
Lord.
say it. I'm going to say it. I'll say it this way. Take big risk. I was going to say be stupid, but stupid can be a little offensive to some people. So I won't say it that way. I'll say take big risk. If you don't have a family, you're under the age of 25, or you're under the age of 30, and you don't have a track record of investing, the best way to learn is to lose when it comes to investing. The best way to learn is to lose. And the reason most people never figure out investing is because they start too late. And when you start late in the investing space, you can't afford to lose. So if you've got a wife, kids, or a husband, kids, and retirement's around the corner, and the kids got to go to college and daycare, and you got a mortgage, like you can't afford to lose. But if you're young, like I started investing when I was like 19, 20, 21. And I'm talking, I was investing in Tesla, the stock market, the coins when they first came out. I mean, I invested in everything. I lost a lot of money too. I invested in business, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've lost a lot of money. Let's put it that way. I can't even think about the amount of money I've lost. But I'll put it to you like this. It was very, very strategic. Those were strategic losses. I knew the reality of losing, the possibility of losing. And I said, I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. I don't have a mortgage. Now is the best time to do it. And it taught me tremendously.
Wow, that is interesting. And so the questions are coming, but we're going to need you to take a minute right now and pause and send in a donation at this time. $10. Who's going to match her for $10? If you're going to do $10, go ahead and put it in the comment section. If you learned tonight, you've learned so much information, it's priceless, I would venture to say. So go ahead and send in your donation, Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal. All right. Solomon says, I think investing young definitely determines your financial trajectory in the future. What would you say about that?
I would say yes. And the biggest thing, the caveat to what I said was learn. And you mentioned this earlier, Dr. Jackson, is learn from your mistakes. So when it comes to investing, I don't just mean throw money at things. I mean, get some books on investing. I mean, pick some stocks on the stock market or some real estate, whatever you're going to invest in, but you need to have a plan. And when I say go all in, risk big, I mean bet big and bet big based on your information. And then when you identify that the bet was wrong or it didn't work out the way you thought it would, evaluate your thought process. That's what I mean. So I mean, like, okay, how did you gather information? Maybe you gathered it haphazardly, too fast. How did you increase your investment? Maybe you increased your investment too fast, or you got emotional. Okay,
Mm.
that's the thing. And then FOMO, fear of missing out. Did you place a bet because everybody else was placing that bet and you didn't want to miss out on the action? Or did you place a reasonable bet because you thought it was actually the right thing to do? So I say bet big because you can learn faster from drastic representations. It's like, what do they say? It's better to run fast in the wrong direction and get there sooner than run slow in the wrong direction and find out by the time you get there that you were going the wrong way. So that's what I mean.
All right. What is the most valuable lesson you have learned in your adulthood about finances and entrepreneurship?
It costs more than you could ever imagine, and it usually takes longer than you think it should.
I love it. I love it. Like, that's very true. All right. So, do you think crypto or stock yield higher returns?
So this is tricky because those are two different forms of investing because one isn't technically investing. One is, and that's the actual term for those that wrote that down. There's technical analysis and fundamental analysis. When I was referencing the
Yes.
methods of analytics earlier for investors, those are the two methods. So love when that happens. So back to what I was saying. Speculation is what crypto is, whereas investing is what the stock market is. So the difference is that one has value that comes from what other people are willing to pay for it simply based off of what they think it's worth. That's speculation. That means I think this thing should or will be worth this, so I'm willing to pay this for it today. But you have no real reason for believing that. And that's why most people that are trading cryptocurrency, they're using candlesticks and things of that nature. They use what's known as technical analysis and not so much fundamental analysis, because it's very hard to use fundamental analysis when you're trying to evaluate stocks, or excuse me, crypto, because there's no real assets underpinning the investment. However, when you're investing in stocks, stocks are backed by assets that can be evaluated. So if you go to a company that's on the stock market, then it legally has to post, I believe it's K9. And once you look at the K9, then it'll tell you what its assets are, what its dividend payouts are, if any, what its balance sheet looks like, how much it invested over the past 5 years in ABCD. And then you can run analyses based on what the company's actually worth. And once you look at what the company's worth, then you can do things like PE ratios, which is kind of like a way to value what the asset is worth based off of what it produced. And we're not going to get into that. But a PE
Exactly.
ratio, book value, all of those are just different metrics that you can look at to see how much a stack actually is worth and where they're evaluating where that value is coming from. You can't do that with crypto because crypto isn't backed by assets. It's backed by speculation and the belief, which means one, those are apples and oranges, not apples and apples. So to answer that question would be to distinguish the difference between those two.
All right. It is time for prayer, you all. I want you to send in your prayer requests. We're going to have Dr. Jackson to say a prayer. We want to read what prayer is. Prayer is talking to God. Prayer is not meditation or passive reflection. It is a direct address to God. It is the communication of the human soul with the Lord who created the soul. If you have a prayer request, financial need, whatever it is, I want you to send your prayer request in a hurry because Dr. Jackson, and didn't even realize we had the same name. All right. So Dr. Jackson and Dr. Jackson. But Dr. Jackson is going to say a prayer for you. He's going to go to the throne of grace on your behalf. I'm so happy to see Jason Ridgway on. We have been praying for you, Jason, and I pray to God that you are doing better. Please give us an update. We thank everyone who have tuned in tonight. We appreciate you. We have Mississippi, we have Wisconsin, we have Indiana, we have California, we have New York, and oh wow, I didn't know Emma was on as well. We have so many people. Rochester, New York is on, and we appreciate you and your time. But at this time, if there are no prayer requests, we're going to go to the throne of grace and pray for finances and whatever the Lord leads you to pray for. Um, yes, we want you to do that.
Yes. Thank you very much. Well, Heavenly Father, we come to you blessed, humble, thankful. I ask that you continue to lead and guide the individuals that are on this call and that are around this call. People that may hear it in earshot or people that may come in contact with people that heard this. It says that faith come by hearing and hearing and hearing the word of God. It also says that people perish for a lack of knowledge. So I just ask that the knowledge that they receive, they're able to write things down, make those things plain, and hold them in their hearts, because when it comes to finances, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to dreams and destiny and manifestation, it's like we have all the tools, but sometimes walking it out can be difficult. We have all the ambition and desire, but sometimes bringing ourselves to do the things required can be difficult. So I ask that you lend us your strength, your wisdom, your patience, your insight. Remind us of faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And many times we are in a state of hope, in a state of expectation, trying to avoid the feelings of anxiety. We're in these very complex and perplexed human states as we wait on you, as we trust in you, as we grow not weary in well doing. So as each entrepreneur, visionary, family member seeking to build wealth listens to this and comes together in agreement, I ask that you guide them, empower them, enlighten them, and carry them across the finish line. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord turn your face towards him and give you peace. It has been a plum pleasing pleasure to have each and every one of you on tonight and to have you, Doctor, on. I appreciate you. Can you give the audience a way of communicating with you when this live is over? And give them your last words.
Absolutely. You guys can contact me at info@IBCG Consultants. So I'll put that in the chat for Dr. Jackson so that she can post it. That'll be easy. Or you can Google me. That's probably the easiest way. Google Bobby Jackson CFO and all of my platforms will pop up. You'll be able to find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. When we put our website back up, then you can schedule calls and different things with me.
All right. Thank you so much and have a great evening.